Hi, friends. Here we are, and we are in our third week of our online portion of this course. And so I'm going to talk to you about some of the concepts that are represented in our chapter this week from the Generosity Network. Chapter 10, as you know, is on building an empowered collaborative board. And you've had some maybe limited discussions if with some of our visitors who've come to class during the semester. So I want to talk a little bit about boards and how they function and what their role is, and just give you a little bit better sense of that, both from the reading and from some of my own experience as a board member on some other groups. So, first of all, just to let you know, I actually serve on three different boards for three different nonprofit organizations. The first, who you have met, is the Community Foundation of Kankakee River Valley, and that was Nicole, who came and spoke to us before we broke camp at spring break. The second board that I serve on is that of the Bridge Teen Center. And typically they're a part of our class and part of the interview sequence, but with what has been going on in the recent week with our guests from the Bridge Teen Center, they are literally working on loans and filing paper and working desperately hard to keep their staff paid, to keep things covered until this whole deal kind of shakes out. So they were going to be with us, but that'll have to be another time. But the Bridge Teen Center functions in Orland Park, Illinois, and they have after school programming. They have Friday night programming for grades 7 to 12. And literally, the numbers are staggering. They have now served in 7 years over 9,000 individual teens from around the Chicagoland area. So I serve on their board as well, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as well as the others here in a second. The third, which is a different kind of organization, is a very small organization that started just about 3 years ago, and that is called the Camp for Change. And this is a camp for kids who have been through traumatic, abusive situations of a variety of different types. And each summer, what they do is they hold a week-long camp for these kids, and it's an equestrian camp. So they spend the week learning how to feed, groom, care for a horse, how to ride. And there's really some fantastic therapeutic things that happen in the lives of these kids. And so I'll tell you about that as well, because each of them are different kinds of nonprofits, and so sometimes the board functions are different. So that's the preview of the boards that I have experience with, as far as the nonprofit realm goes. So, just in general, nonprofit organizations, when they file with the state where they're located and apply to be legal or licensed as an approved nonprofit, meaning they can receive donors, gifts, and those kinds of things. When that is done, part of that process is that any nonprofit has to identify a board of directors, specifically name them, provide contact information, and those kinds of things. So the board is there for a variety of different reasons, and I'll explain that a little bit more. So for a nonprofit to be legal, to be valid, etc., and receive funds and gifts from anyone, basically, that would be a tax deductible gift, you must be registered and filed with the state where you are. So each of these three groups that I have worked with have done that. In fact, Camp for Change, I interacted with them initially because someone referred them to me to actually help them go through the process of incorporating as a nonprofit. So that was a newer experience for me about 3 years ago, to actually help form a nonprofit. It's their nonprofit. I just assisted them with that, and then of course I wound up on their board. So that's a first. they must have a board of directors. Now, there are different kinds of boards that are all legitimate, and it just depends on often the size and type of the organization and the size and role of the board itself. So, for example, the first type, which is just that you're reading referred to, is really just what's called an informal board. And I would classify my role with Camp for Change in that way. We do have board meetings. We do make decisions as a group and process things as needed. But it's not a board that meets, every month or every other month. Sometimes it's just once or twice in a year, depending on the needs that are there. So our structure as a board, it is a smaller group because it's a very small nonprofit. And our function is largely informal, other than formally approving decisions and signing contracts and those things to do the camp and that kind of thing. The second type, which is more formal and more in terms of sense of responsibility that board member must have with that organization, and that is the fiduciary board. Now, a fiduciary board simply means that group has fiduciary responsibility, and a fiduciary responsibility is that we are together collectively responsible to make sure that nonprofit is properly filing paperwork, is properly reflecting their income, their revenue, their expenses, their loss, their debt, and all those kinds of things. And so in that way, the Community Foundation of Kankakee River Valley would be more that way. We meet every single month. We go over the finances. We go over the where they are in the budget year. We go over all kinds of things related to operations and have that shared responsibility. Because when you have a foundation like that's many millions of dollars, those have to be managed and taken care of in a very specific, proper way, legality and otherwise. And so that board has a deeper responsibility and commitment to that organization because they need a board that is very much specifically fiduciary. A third type of board, which your chapter called an active board. I would classify my role and experience with the Bridge Teen Center board as that of an active board. Now, there are aspects of that particular board that also we do have fiduciary responsibility. Same thing, reviewing budgets, reviewing expenses, reviewing any changes with personnel and those kinds of things. That board meets more like every 2 months, so it's only 5-6 times a year that we meet to conduct formal board business. Now, one of the things about the classification of an active board is that most of us on that board, we don't just simply show up now and then for a board meeting now and then. There are some expectations and requirements that we agree to when we become a part of that board. And commonly, those kinds of things are, first of all, a common thing among many, many boards is that if you commit to be a member of that board, you're basically saying, hey, I'm in and I believe in this organization. And so there is an expectation that I agree to that I will be a financial supporter of the Bridge too. So I commit as a board member that I'm going to give dollars and bring revenue to the organization, and that's important when you're thinking about a board that is actively involved in the life of the nonprofit that they're working with. So the active board is committed to giving. The active board will often serve as like a volunteer as well in the organization. For example, the Bridge Teen Center offers literally over 300 different after-school programs every year. And so students can sign up for those online and they come in for those programs, and those are all done by volunteers. Some of those are folks that simply volunteer because they have a skill, or maybe the arts or music or you name it. There's an amazing array of programs. But those will often include some of the people on our board that may have a topic or something that they do a session or an after school program on. Also, for the Friday night activities, that's more of a live music, food, fun kind of venue. That's a healthy place for kids to be on a Friday night, that is safe, that is appropriate in all the activities that are going on. And there are opportunities there for many of us to volunteer as board members there on the Friday night. I'm the cafe guy. I help out once in a while at the cafe, selling sodas and snacks and that kind of thing, and just interacting with the kids. I know you guys can picture that. So an active board, sorry, I clunked something. So an active board has both the meeting structure, the approvals, and those kind of things, because the founders and the executive director of those foundations report to that board of directors. They cannot just free reign operate, and they don't. So those are some differences of an informal board, fiduciary board, and an active board that's both giving and volunteering. Now, there's one other area too that I want to touch on briefly, and that is that many times organizations, and ONU is no different, will have advisory boards. And the advisory boards are different than these different kinds of boards that I just described to you. And I'll explain that. So an advisory board is, for what it sounds like, they are simply there to give advice to the group or to the school or department. They don't have fiduciary responsibility as far as finances. They are simply a group that comes in from time to time, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, and gives that team or that organization their advice, what they see out in the workplace. So, for example, here at Olivet, in our School of Engineering and Technology, there's a technology advisory board, and these are people who are working for national companies that do, cloud development, software, you name it, as far as the different kinds of realms that they serve in. So that group of 5-6 people came in earlier this spring, and we spent an entire day together talking about the program, the courses, the offerings, what should be a part of it, what maybe need changed, those kinds of things. And a lot of other academic schools, academic departments at Olivet do that. When I was at a previous institution, I was a faculty member at the School of Business there, and we did the same thing. We had a School of Business advisory board, and we would bring them in once a year, usually in the fall, for a conference event that we had. And we would spend a day or part of the day with them doing the same kinds of things, getting their feedback, listening to them, hearing what they see from the outside looking in. Now, they may be alumni, they are sometimes not, but they may be industry professionals who can look at our curriculum, look at what we're doing, and say, hey, that's right on the money. That's what people need coming into the workforce at our companies. Or they may say, there's a couple things lacking here. Let's think about that. So the advisory boards function in that way, and they have no authority beyond the fact that we just embrace their knowledge, we embrace their input, and invest in those relationships so that we can keep hearing from them on a regular basis throughout the months and weeks that are there. So that's just a few things about different types of boards and advisory groups and how those function. So I hope that's helpful to you. You'll want to read more in the text so that you get the full background on the different kinds of components of building a collaborative and empowered board. So talk to you later.